Who was the most improved player from the Dallas Cowboys this season? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're doing some superlatives for the Dallas Cowboys from the 2023 season, including top rookie, most outstanding player. And Landon, I want to first start with the most improved player from the Dallas Cowboys this year. Who do you got?
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because there are definitely guys who improved in a lot of different ways, kind of at different levels, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and say that for me, it's Marquise Bell.
That was the name I had.
Just simply because from where he was, in the truest form of the question, most improved. I think he's gone the furthest distance, right? I think there's other guys who have made improvements that aren't maybe as far from where they were to where they've gotten, but like that improvement is harder, right? Like I think Jake Ferguson is a guy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm stealing.
No,
your
you're
guy,
good. Go ahead.
But I think it's Ferguson didn't travel as far. I think, but leveling up when you're already at that high, I think is difficult. And so I when he's already gotten that much exposure, I just didn't expect him to get kind of at that much better than he did. But Marquise Bell went from a guy that wasn't even playing the position he ended up playing at the end of the year, and was basically an afterthought to a guy who I think I still continually want to see get a lot of snaps at linebacker next year, despite no matter what they do at the position. Obviously, they're going to need some help there, but I just think that what he was able to do, especially in the short term, right after Leighton Vander Esch got hurt, was really kind of unlike anything I had really ever seen as far as a player playing out of position, undersized, and still thriving at a spot that, we hadn't really seen him play at.
Yeah, because he went from a healthy scratch last year, playing safety behind all those guys to playing 701 snaps at linebacker this year. He played more snaps than Osa Odigizua, DeMarcus Lawrence, or, Dorrance Armstrong. Like that's how big of a role he had. Now, there were games where he struggled. In the playoffs, he struggled. Both linebackers struggled, but he played incredibly well for most of the season, finished as PFF's number 19 graded linebacker. Maybe he's not an every down linebacker moving forward, but to go from somebody who literally doesn't even get a helmet on Sundays to maybe like your 7th or 8th best defender, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I would say so too. I think it's just it's hard to like, and again, like I think it's all the particulars, right? He's a 205 pound linebacker. It's all of those things that you just was very hard to anticipate. And on top of all that, an incredible amount of personal football growth for the player from last season to this season.
I'm gonna also mention Jake Ferguson, who you mentioned. We had a lot of conversations about the tight end position last offseason.
Yeah.
We did a lot of film breakdown on prospects. We looked at free agents that the Cowboys could sign. And to your credit, I think a lot of times you just thought they're going to be okay at tight end. They're going to be okay because you like what you saw from Jake Ferguson as a rookie. And what we saw from him in year 2 was more than fine. Like he became a legitimate weapon. Now, I don't know if he has the ceiling to be a top 5 tight end the way that like a George Kittle or Sam Laporte or any of those guys can be, but he's right there. I was really impressed by the leap that Jake Ferguson, not at the actual leap that he takes on the field, but that leap he took as a player.
I was impressed by that too.
Yeah, that he made in year 2.
Yeah, and look, I think if you clean up a little bit of the kind of target conversion stuff, like if you can just kind of hold on to a couple more of these passes, and just get a little bit stronger at the point of attack with the ball, right? And just holding on to some of these more tough catches that he couldn't quite hold on to this season. I think you can get him to kind of much closer to that Kittle Laporta range, because I do think that there is a lot of yak ability there that we've obviously witnessed, that if he can get the ball in his hands, he can be a playmaker for sure.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see exactly, how that kind of continues to develop. So
just a couple other names that I wanted to mention. These are just runner-ups. I thought Osa Odigizua, we've always loved Osa, but I thought he really took a step in year 3. I thought he played the best football of his career. Rico Dowdle, I mean, maybe this is just a health thing, but he stayed healthy for most of the season and developed into a quality RB2. Even someone like Deron Bland, who had an outstanding rookie season, went from, hey, a guy that, you could play in the slot, play in the corner, really good number 3 cornerback, to, hey, he's an all-pro corner now, who is one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year. That's quite a jump that Deron Bland had in year 2 as well.
Osa Odigizua, I think, is another guy that if you talk about just great leaps, I think was playing very good football last year, but really has become a difference maker as a defensive tackle this season. So lots of guys that were able to kind of up their game this season. So it wasn't an easy pick this year.
Yeah, I mean, when you go 12-5, it's not surprising that you're going to have a lot of players that improve, right? I know everybody's still down because of the playoff loss, and I get it. But this was still a really good season in a lot of different ways from a lot of different players. So we can't just throw out the entire regular season because of one bad playoff loss. There's still a lot of good things that come out of this season, including the development of Jake Ferguson, the development of Marquise Bell, and all of the other names that Landon just listed. All right, let's get into a little bit harder of a category. Landon, the top rookie from the 2023 class. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, including the top national shows that are covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Landon, let's talk about top rookie. Not a great rookie class that we've been accustomed to seeing before.
As far as production goes, that's for sure. Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
Who is your top rookie from this class?
I mean, it's Hunter Lipke, without a doubt. He's the best player.
Well, hey, listen, we need to mention Lipke. He did end up having a bigger role in this team than I think anybody anticipated.
Anybody not named me? I mean, look, just real quick. I mean, he obviously had a really great year in special teams as well. He's I think he was like second on the team for special teams tackles, or not tackles, but they have a grading system, right? A point system that was created by Bones, and he announced at the end of the year that I think Hunter was second on the team on top of all his fullback stuff. But no, obviously
graded out as PFF's 4th highest rated fullback in the NFL.
Basically an all-pro. He's basically an all-pro fullback, guys. So I listen. I don't think that there's a ton of choices here. I mean, because look, I mean, the rookies didn't get a ton of opportunities to kind of make a mark. I think the only rookies that consistently played were, the 4 guys that are probably the only 4 that are eligible for this award, which would be Mozzie, Luke, Butter, and TJ Bass, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just for the sake of argument here, I'm going to count Butter. I think, it's like, I think Aubrey was the best rookie here. I mean, he was the only 35-year-old rookie, if I'm not mistaken, but he was the guy that came in, a first year in the NFL and broke a whole bunch of records as a rookie at his position. Almost broke the record for the most made field goals to start a career, if I'm not mistaken, or
Mhm.
wasn't that was not the one that he couldn't quite reach, right?
I
It was
think,
the
yeah, was it the
Vanderjagt.
most?
I think Vanderjagt had like 2 more kicks, I think, to
Yeah,
start his career. If
you
I'm
don't
not
ever want to
mistaken.
be mentioned with Vanderjagt though. That's a bad.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's for sure. I think there's other guys we can talk about here. I think that other guys, kind of were able to make kind of smaller contributions. Obviously, not what we were looking for from our rookie class. And I think it's easy to dismiss Brandon because he's the kicker. And
Yeah, yeah.
listen, we should dismiss Brandon because he's the kicker. But for as much complaining as this fan base made all during the offseason about what are they going to do about kicker? What are they going to do about kicker? What are they going to do about kicker? I think it's good enough to give Brandon Aubrey some flowers here for making us not have to talk about that talking point for the entire season.
Yeah. Brandon Aubrey, we're going to call him a rookie. I know the NFL doesn't recognize him as a rookie because he played in another professional league.
Wait,
the
what?
USFL.
That's bull. Come
I know.
on.
I know.
That's
It's
bull.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how many conversations we had this offseason about kicker and what they should do at kicker. Should they go draft somebody? Should they sign a Mason Crosby? Should they go out and get Robbie Gould? To have that guy come in and make basically every kick up until week 18. Actually, he didn't. He made every kick up until week 18. Was pretty incredible. And I think he also led the NFL in touchbacks, which I think it matters because you're just not killing your guys on special teams because you're getting so many touchbacks, right? He's kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone. I do think it matters. I wanted to mention another guy. Do you know which rookie played the most snaps for the Cowboys this year?
Well, I'm gonna guess because now that I'm actually thinking about it, it could be either I'm gonna say either Schoon or TJ Bass.
If you include special team snaps, TJ Bass led the Cowboys in rookies in snaps this year.
It's not hard to believe because the truth of the matter is that like when he plays, he's playing the full time. Like they're not subbing him off the field, right? Like whereas
and there was a
Mozzie
game
and Luke are rotating, right?
Right, and there was a game against the Jets where he played like 47 snaps and he didn't even start that game.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going by relative to expectations, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you get a guy off undrafted free agency who you pick up. He not only does he make the 53-man roster, he ends up becoming like your swing interior guy. And obviously there's a drop off when Tyler Smith and Zach Martin aren't playing, but he wasn't the reason your offensive line ever struggled in a game. And I think that does matter. Like having just quality, competent offensive linemen is what this team has missed, in several other seasons. So for that reason, I'm giving the award to TJ Bass.
I think it's good, because like, look, we talk about it all the time. The offensive line, defensive backfield, it's a weak link system, right? It's not necessarily about the best player that you have in that group as much as it's important to have the worst player in that group at a high level, right? So when you sub in a guy to come in and play, he becomes the punching Judy or whatever you want to call it, the victim, the target, right?
He's the target. Yep. They're circling him.
So he has the hardest job as soon as he comes in because everyone's targeting him.
Correct.
On top of him being the player with the least talent. So for TJ Bass to consistently come in, left guard, right guard, wherever, and consistently give you solid snaps and not get you beat, right? Like I think back to the Arizona game, right, where it wasn't even just him that was in there. It was like 2 other guys that were having to kind of sub in and be there, but. And so it kind of at times like just gave us like a bad taste in our mouth about the backup offensive line. But then when you look at when he came in individually, and there wasn't like a huge drop off in the offense, right? It wasn't it was like a noticeable Dak can't get the ball off. We can't run the ball more than we normally can't run the ball. It's so I think that, and frankly, I thought TJ Bass was a plus run player. When he was on the field.
And I was going to say, I think we've also got to the point with TJ Bass where it's like, if he has to be one of your 3 interior starting offensive linemen next year, I don't hate it.
I don't hate it either. And honestly, I think that the whole, like, we're going to see what happens with Tyron Smith this year. But if Tyron Smith doesn't, come back for some reason, and if they decided that they wanted to go into next year with Tyler as the left tackle and Tyler Bass as your starting left guard, and then maybe you draft another guy, right? And then just let them compete. I think I'm okay with that, because I believe that TJ Bass is going to get better in the offseason, and that improvement will put him in a spot where I think he could be a good little player for you, and maybe a plus starter eventually as he develops.
I could see the Cowboys bringing back like Chuma Doga and then just trying to draft a guy that can play all three interior spots just to give you some more flexibility there. I think TJ Bass has warranted a longer look
Yeah.
at one of the guard spots. And again, to be an undrafted free agent and to come in and do that in year one, it's pretty impressive. I do want to just mention, go ahead, Landon.
Well, I was just going to say, last thing, I'll throw out this wild card. Can TJ Bass snap the ball? Because
I want him to do that like a million times this offseason.
I'd love to see. I mean, I think he's a great fit at center, honestly,
Sure.
if he could do that. So it'd be interesting to see in this offseason.
I just want to mention he's not winning this award or anything, but I think Luke Schoonmaker gets a little bit bad rap of what he's done. I mean, we knew the yardage total as a pass catcher just wasn't going to be there because they already had a guy in Jake Ferguson that could do that. I would argue that Scooney was your best blocking tight end this year.
Absolutely.
And I think they gave him the hardest assignments as a blocker. I mean, obviously, it bums me out a little bit to watch like Sam Laporta, who the Cowboys liked a lot. That got drafted in the second round. I watched Michael Mayer because I have to cover that Raider team as well. I see Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. Like, there's some really good tight ends in this class. And when you compare their stats to Scooney, obviously it's not the same. But I'm not down on Scooney either. I think he's going to take a pretty massive leap in year two for a couple of reasons. Number one, like those guys usually don't break out until year 2 or 3. Look at Jake Ferguson. And then on top of that, remember, Scooney basically missed the entire offseason. He got hurt in the East-West Shrine game. He got hurt early in training camp, and we didn't even think we were going to see him at all in preseason. He did end up playing some preseason games, played in week 1. I would just be cautious there before saying that's a bad pick or that's a busted pick. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, thank you. I'm glad you brought it up. The reason that I said thank you is because honestly, he was someone that I was going to throw out there because I think he deserves being mentioned here, because the tight end position is more than just catching passes, and he's kind of in this sort of reverse, tight end development plan, right? Where he came in and he blocks like he's a fifth tackle, or so he's in there and able to kind of move folks around and can complete complicated blocking assignments. Look, the run blocking this year wasn't as good as last year, but I will say where it was better was on the edges in the tight end position. It was unbelievably better and markedly better. And a large portion of that is Ferguson. We've already given him his flowers on most improved, but another large portion of that is that Scooney was able to come in here and immediately make an impact as a blocker. He's still kind of figuring it out as a receiver, but even that is just about, I think, finishing. And that's something that I think you can definitely kind of learn in the offseason. You really focus on crisp routes and catching the football and strengthening your hands. And then now suddenly you're going to have a really, really nice compliment to Ferguson, a big tree blocking, big tackle type guy who, when everyone else is kind of focused on CD and Ferguson and Cooks and whoever else is on this team, it's just a guy that can slip out after maybe blocking a little while, be a big open target who's hard to tackle once he gets moving. Is he going to ever be Sam Laporta? Absolutely not. Is he going to be, any of those kind of guys? But that's just, no, he's just not that type of player. But that's what you have Ferguson for. And what you've got Scooney for is kind of all that other stuff. And then as time goes on, I think he can be more and more of a pass catcher. And then, eventually maybe you have kind of a twin dynamite situation where you've got two different tight ends of different skill sets that you kind of deploy in the passing games in different ways.
All right, let's talk about which player had the most outstanding season for the Dallas Cowboys in 2023. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is over and we're inching closer to the Super Bowl, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and so much more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers. On tomorrow's show, we've got a special guest, John Owning, jumping on the show to discuss all things Dallas Cowboys. And we're going to ask him, what's wrong with this current Cowboys team and how do they fix it? Tough question, but
if he doesn't answer, you should feel free to tweet at him and make sure that he comes up with a better answer. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely feel free about that.
All right, let's get into most outstanding player. Not calling this the MVP award because that's completely different. Who had the most outstanding season for the Dallas Cowboys?
I'm gonna go with CeeDee Lamb. I think I think that Dak Prescott absolutely is right there in the conversation for this, and they obviously had a great season in a lot of ways. I just think that it would have been very difficult for this season to play out the way it had been without CeeDee Lamb. I think it's easy to say that without the quarterback, 99% of the time anyways, right? But I really feel like this team turned the corner when they started to focus on CeeDee Lamb as being the engine of this offense. And you look and I'm pretty sure he broke basically every single season record for receiving for a Cowboys wide receiver, if I'm not mistaken. It's just, the numbers are crazy. And I think a lot of it kind of got overshadowed just by Dak's own MVP race that was happening near the end of the season. But I think you look at a guy who, there's been a lot of questions as to why the team got rid of Cooper and why the team kind of moved off of Cooper. And I think a lot of it was to kind of give CeeDee Lamb the room that he needed to develop. And there was a lot of questions of whether that was a good idea or not, and whether CeeDee was worth that or not. I think we've seen that feeding CeeDee at the rate that we've fed CeeDee is the way to go.
Yes.
And that's the way to run this offense. And, not having Cooper is one thing, but having this type of CeeDee is another, right? I think that's what makes it worth it. So I think he deserves all the flowers. And I feel like at times he's been overlooked because of a lot of other really great superstars in this team. But I think he was just simply outstanding for, the entire season. And if wide receivers were in the races for MVP at a regular basis, I mean, the guy who almost got 2,000 yards aside, I think CeeDee Lamb should have been in that conversation.
And honestly, that was my pick until I started doing a little bit more research because I have no idea what this offense would be without CeeDee Lamb. They probably really would have struggled because he carried them in so many big games. But if we're going like most outstanding player or most outstanding season, it's really hard to look at Deron Bland's season and not think that was the most outstanding one. I was doing some research on Bland. He had 3% of all the NFL's interceptions, and that's the highest percent by a defensive or by a player like over the last 50 years. And if you look at that pick six record, when that was originally set, I think there was 247 more interceptions thrown that season than there were this year. Like interceptions were just being thrown at a much higher rate than they were this year. Like, the way that it is in the NFL now, the quarterback has more than 12 interceptions. They're getting called turnover prone. And should they move on from him now? Right. But to get 9 interceptions and have 5 pick sixes and only really have one bad game against DK Metcalf, which by the way, he also got an interception in that game.
That's right.
It's really, really hard not to pick Deron Bland. He's not better than Micah Parsons. He's not better than CeeDee. He's not better than Dak, but his season was a little bit more unique than those guys.
Yeah, he may not be better than Trayvon Diggs, but he definitely had a better season than any of those guys. I argued CeeDee Lamb, but this is a valid, very, very good point. I mean, obviously record-breaking season. In a position that your main job is to take away the pass, but then on top of that is to take the ball away. For you to do that job at a historic rate and then also score touchdowns on top of that, I think that it really was flabbergasting for a lot of folks.
Oh, yeah.
Including
It's
us,
almost like people
obviously.
don't even recognize how ridiculous it was.
Yeah.
That he got 9 interceptions and 5 I almost think Trayvon Diggs' season in 2021 made us a little bit numb to how ridiculous this year is.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, how long ago was it? Like 5 years ago, where we were talking about how this team never gets interceptions. We never intercept the ball. Like, it's like, we can never catch the ball. Our defensive backs can't ever catch the ball. Now, suddenly, in the last 3 years, we've had 2 different interception leaders on this team, one of which who broke the pick 6 record in a season. I mean, the Cowboys have been living good in that sense for sure. So
we were calling
good to watch.
Jeff Heath the GOAT because he would get multiple interceptions in a season. Shout out to Duran Bland. What a season. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus Mosier, Marcus_Mosier. Again, check out tomorrow's show with John Owning. Should be fantastic. Can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see everybody then.